woman dies in fire, her journey to heaven is heart-stopping. NDE. What lies ahead of this journey? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The sky was a deep shade of twilight as Clara walked through her small suburban neighborhood, her arms full of groceries and her mind heavy with thoughts. Life had been complicated lately, a string of disagreements with her estranged sister, financial struggles, and the lingering grief of her mother's passing weighed heavily on her heart. She had always been resilient, but tonight, the burden felt particularly heavy. As she approached her modest home, a small, two-story house tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, Clara couldn't shake the sense of unease that had followed her all day. She chalked it up to stress, taking a deep breath as she unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The familiar warmth of her home greeted her, but the unease lingered. Setting the groceries on the counter, Clara lit a candle on the mantel, a habit she had developed for comfort since her mother's death. She didn't realize, in that moment, how significant that single act would become. Later that night, Clara sat on the couch with a cup of tea, the soft glow of the candle flickering in the corner. She was lost in thought, replaying the heated argument she'd had with her sister, Leah, just a few days ago. They had always been close, but their relationship had frayed since their mother's passing, tension arising over unspoken resentments and unhealed wounds. "I should call her," Clara murmured to herself, reaching for her phone. But as her hand hovered over it, she hesitated. What if Leah didn't want to hear from her? What if it only made things worse? She placed the phone back down with a sigh, the weight of regret settling over her. Exhausted, Clara decided to call it a night, heading upstairs to her bedroom. Hours later, Clara was jolted awake by the smell of smoke. At first, she thought she was dreaming, but as the haze filled her nostrils and her lungs, panic set in. She bolted upright, her heart pounding as she realized the house was on fire. Flames licked at the walls downstairs, their orange glow casting eerie shadows up the staircase. The heat was intense, and the air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe. Clara grabbed a blanket, covering her nose and mouth as she rushed to the door. She tried to make her way down the stairs, but the flames had spread too quickly, consuming the living room and blocking her path. The fire roared like a living beast, its heat pressing against her skin. Desperate, Clara turned back toward her bedroom, hoping to escape through the window. She struggled with the latch, her hands trembling as smoke filled her lungs. She coughed violently, her vision blurring as the lack of oxygen began to take its toll. Finally, the latch gave way, and Clara pushed the window open, gasping for fresh air. But as she leaned out, the flames surged behind her, their heat overwhelming. Clara felt her strength waning, her vision fading as darkness began to close in. Her last thought was of Leah, her face, her smile, the words they had left unsaid. And then, everything went black. When Clara awoke, she wasn't in her bedroom or anywhere she recognized. She found herself standing in a vast, ethereal landscape, the colors more vivid than anything she had ever seen. The sky shimmered with hues of gold and lavender, and the air felt alive, pulsing with a gentle energy that seemed to embrace her. "Where am I?" Clara murmured, her voice echoing softly in the vastness. As she looked around, she noticed a figure approaching, a being of light, radiant and serene. The figure seemed neither male nor female, its form shifting subtly, but its presence was undeniably comforting. "Clara," the being said, its voice melodic and soothing. "You are in a place between worlds, a place of reflection and understanding." Clara's heart raced. "Am I dead?" The being regarded her with a kind expression. "Your physical body is no longer connected to this realm, but your journey is not yet complete." The being extended a hand, and as Clara took it, she felt a wave of warmth and peace wash over her. They began to walk, the landscape shifting around them with each step. Memories from Clara's life played out like scenes from a movie, her childhood, her first love, her happiest moments, and her greatest regrets. One memory in particular stopped Clara in her tracks. It was a day she had tried to forget, a heated argument with Leah over their mother's will. Clara had said things she didn't mean, words that had driven a wedge between them. "I hurt her," Clara whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't mean to, but I did. The being placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Every soul carries pain, Clara. But it is through reflection and understanding that we find forgiveness, for ourselves and for others. As they continued their journey, Clara noticed other figures in the distance. Souls, she realized, moving through their own paths of reflection. Some were surrounded by light, their faces peaceful, while others seemed weighed down by shadows, their expressions pained. Why are some in light and others in darkness? Claire asked. The light represents acceptance and forgiveness, the being explained. The darkness stems from unresolved pain and regret. Each soul must confront its own truth to find peace. Clara thought of her own regrets, her fractured relationship with Leah, the times she had let fear hold her back, the moments she had taken for granted. The weight of it all pressed against her, but the being's presence was a steady anchor. Eventually, they reached a place that took Clara's breath away. It was a meadow unlike anything she had ever seen, its beauty otherworldly. The grass sparkled like crystals, and the air was filled with a melody that seemed to come from the very earth itself. In the center of the meadow stood a towering gate, its surface shimmering with an iridescent light. Clara felt drawn to it, her heart swelling with a mix of awe and longing. This is the gate of transition, the being said. Beyond it lies the next realm of existence. But your journey is not yet over, Clara. You have a choice to make. Clara looked at the being, her brow furrowing. What choice? You may continue forward, into the next realm, the being said. Or you may return to the mortal world, carrying with you the lessons you have learned. Clara's mind swirled with questions. Return? My body, it was in the fire. I don't even know if I can go back. The being's expression softened. Your body still holds life, though it is fragile. The choice is yours, Clara. But know this, if you return, it will be with purpose. You will carry a message that the world needs to hear. Clara turned toward the gate, its light beckoning her with a promise of peace. But as she stood there, she thought of Leah, of the things she wished she had said, the moments she wished she could relive. She thought of the life she still had left to live and the difference she could make. I want to go back, Clara said, her voice steady. I want to make things right. The being nodded, its light glowing brighter. Then go, Clara. And remember, love is the greatest gift you can give, to yourself and to others. In an instant, Clara felt herself being pulled backward, the meadow fading away as the light consumed her. She heard the being's voice one last time, a whisper that echoed in her heart. Carry the light within you always. Clara gasped as her eyes flew open, her lungs burning as if still filled with smoke. The bright, sterile lights of a hospital room greeted her, and the faint hum of monitors filled the air. Her body felt heavy, each breath labored, but she was alive. A nurse rushed into the room, her face a mix of relief and surprise. You're awake. Oh, thank goodness. Clara tried to speak, but her throat was raw, the words caught in her chest. The nurse placed a hand on her shoulder, her touch gentle. Don't try to talk just yet. You've been through a lot. Just rest. As Clara lay back, her mind reeled. The fire, the journey, the being of light. It all felt so vivid, so real. But as she glanced down at her bandaged arms and the 4 in her hand, she wondered if it had all been a dream, a figment of her unconscious mind. The next few days were a blur of doctors, nurses, and visitors. Friends and neighbors stopped by to check on her, their faces filled with concern. Clara learned that firefighters had found her just in time, pulling her unconscious body from the burning house. The damage had been extensive, but she was alive, and that was nothing short of a miracle. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her survival than luck. The memories of her journey beyond the physical world lingered, vivid and unshakable. She replayed the being's words in her mind. Carry the light within you always. A week later, Clara was discharged from the hospital and moved in temporarily with a friend while she figured out her next steps. Her home had been reduced to ashes, along with most of her belongings. But rather than feeling despair, Clara felt an odd sense of clarity. She had been given a second chance, and she intended to make the most of it. One of the first things she did was pick up the phone and call Leah. Her heart raced as she listened to the line ring, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, Leah's voice came through, hesitant and guarded. "Hello. Leah, it's me," Clara said, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For the things I said, for how I hurt you. I don't want us to be like this anymore." There was a long pause on the other end, and Clara feared Leah might hang up. But then she heard a soft sniffle. "I'm sorry too," Leah said, her voice breaking. "I've missed you, Clara. I've wanted to call, but I didn't know how." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I've missed you too. Can we start over? Please?" "Of course," Leah said. "I'd like that." Reconnecting with Leah was the first step in Clara's journey of healing and purpose. As the weeks went on, she began sharing her story with close friends and family, opening up about her near-death experience. Some listened with awe and curiosity, while others met her words with skepticism. But Clara didn't let their reactions deter her. She knew what she had experienced, and she knew it was real. One evening, Leah invited Clara over for dinner. As they sat together, laughing and reminiscing, Leah asked the question that had been on her mind since Clara's call. "What was it like?" she asked. "The experience you had. Do you remember it?" Clara hesitated, searching for the right words. "It was beautiful," she said finally. "I felt this incredible peace, like I was part of something so much bigger than myself. And there was a being, a guide, I guess, who helped me understand my life, my regrets, and what really matters." Leah listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "And what do you think really matters?" "Love," Clara said simply. "Loving ourselves, loving others, and making the most of the time we have. Everything else is just noise." Inspired by her experience, Clara began volunteering at a local hospice, offering comfort and companionship to those nearing the end of their lives. She found that her story often resonated with the patients, providing them with a sense of hope and peace. One patient, an elderly man named Harold, became particularly close to Clara. He was quiet and reserved at first, but over time, he opened up about his fears and regrets. "I wish I had told my daughter how proud I was of her," Harold admitted one afternoon. "She always thought I was too hard on her, and I guess I was. I just didn't know how to show her I cared." Clara took his hand, her voice gentle. "It's not too late, Harold. You can still tell her. And I think she'll understand." Harold nodded, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Clara. You've given me the courage to try." Word of Clara's story began to spread, and she was invited to speak at a local community event about her journey and the lessons she had learned. Nervous but determined, Clara stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding as she faced the crowd. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "A few months ago, I was in a fire that nearly took my life. But what happened after was even more profound. I experienced something that changed me forever, a journey beyond this world, where I learned the importance of love, forgiveness, and living with purpose." She shared her story with raw honesty, describing the being of light, the gate, and the choice she had been given. As she spoke, she noticed tears in the eyes of many audience members, their faces filled with emotion. "I don't have all the answers," Clara concluded. "But I do know this: every moment we have is a gift. Every connection we make has the power to change a life. And even in our darkest moments, there is always light." The room erupted into applause, and Clara felt a warmth she hadn't experienced before, a sense of fulfillment and purpose that went beyond words. That night, as Clara sat on Leah's porch, staring up at the stars, she felt a deep sense of peace. The journey that had begun in the fire had led her to places she never could have imagined. It had taught her to value what truly mattered, to heal old wounds, and to embrace the light within her. "You've changed," Leah said, sitting beside her. "It's like you found something you were missing." Clara smiled, her gaze fixed on the night sky. "I think I have. And I think it was there all along. I just didn't see it." As the two sisters sat in comfortable silence, Clara felt the weight of her regrets lift, replaced by a quiet joy. The journey wasn't over, but she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. As Clara's story gained momentum, invitations began pouring in from all over the city. Community centers, spiritual groups, and even schools wanted to hear about her extraordinary experience. Though she had never seen herself as a public speaker, Clara found joy in sharing her journey and connecting with others who had faced their own struggles. One day, she was invited to speak at a high school assembly. The principal explained that the students had been struggling with feelings of isolation and uncertainty in the wake of a recent tragedy. A student had passed away in a car accident, leaving the community reeling. Clara hesitated, unsure if her story could bring the comfort they needed. But after some reflection, she accepted, realizing that her experience might offer hope to those who felt lost. The gymnasium was packed with students, their faces somber and expectant. Clara stood on the small stage, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the microphone. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I want to start by saying how sorry I am for your loss. Losing someone you care about is one of the hardest things we go through, and it's okay to feel sad, angry, or even confused. Those feelings are normal." She paused, scanning the room. The students were listening, their eyes fixed on her. "I know how it feels to lose everything," she continued. "A few months ago, I was in a fire that destroyed my home and nearly took my life. In those moments, I felt helpless, like my world was ending. But what happened next changed everything." Clara shared her journey to the afterlife, describing the peace she had felt, the being of light who had guided her, and the lessons she had learned. She spoke about the importance of love, forgiveness, and cherishing the time we have with the people we care about. "One thing I've learned," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "is that even when someone is no longer with us, their love stays. It becomes a part of us, shaping who we are and how we live. And in that way, they're never really gone." By the time Clara finished, many of the students were wiping away tears. A few even stood to clap, their applause spreading through the gym like a wave. Afterward, several students approached her, thanking her for her words and sharing their own experiences with loss. For Clara, it was a deeply humbling moment. She realized that her journey wasn't just about her. It was about the people she could reach and the lives she could touch. As the months passed, Clara's life began to take on a new rhythm. She continued speaking at events and volunteering at the hospice, finding fulfillment in helping others. But she also made time for herself, reconnecting with old friends, exploring new hobbies, and rebuilding her life from the ashes. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Clara noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench, her shoulders hunched and her face buried in her hands. Something about the woman's posture tugged at Clara's heart, and she found herself approaching. "Hi," Clara said gently. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up, her eyes red and swollen. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not really." Clara sat beside her, giving her space to speak if she wanted to. After a moment, the woman sighed. "My name's Emily," she said. "I just lost my job, and I don't know how I'm going to pay rent. Everything feels like it's falling apart." Clara nodded, her expression compassionate. "I've been there," she said. "Not long ago, I lost my home in a fire. It felt like the end of the world. But I learned something important. Even when everything feels broken, we're stronger than we realize. And sometimes, the hardest moments lead us to places we never expected." Emily looked at her, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. "How did you get through it?" Clara smiled. "One step at a time. And with the help of kind people along the way." They talked for a while, and by the end of their conversation, Emily seemed lighter, her shoulders less weighed down by the burdens she carried. Clara gave her a hug before they parted, feeling a quiet joy in knowing she had made a small difference. One evening, Clara received a call from a woman named Diane, who introduced herself as a producer for a national television program. Diane explained that she had heard about Clara's story and wanted to feature her in a segment about near-death experiences. "We think your story could inspire millions of people," Diane said. "Would you be willing to share it on our show?" Clara hesitated. The idea of speaking on such a large platform was both thrilling and intimidating. But after a moment's thought, she said yes, realizing it was another opportunity to spread her message of hope. The day of the interview arrived, and Clara found herself sitting in a brightly lit studio, surrounded by cameras and crew members. The host, a warm and charismatic woman named Sandra, greeted her with a smile. "Clara, your story is incredible," Sandra said as the cameras began to roll. "Can you tell us what it was like to experience something so profound?" Clara nodded, taking a deep breath. "It was life-changing," she said. "When I was in that fire, I thought it was the end. But what I experienced afterward showed me that there's so much more to life and to love than I ever realized." She spoke about the being of light, the gate, and the lessons she had learned, her words flowing with a mix of passion and sincerity. The audience hung on her every word, their faces reflecting a range of emotions. "What do you hope people take away from your story?" Sandra asked. "I hope they realize how precious life is," Clara said. "We don't know how much time we have, so we need to make the most of it. Love deeply, forgive freely, and don't be afraid to let your light shine." When the interview ended, the audience gave her a standing ovation. Clara felt a rush of gratitude, knowing her story had touched their hearts. In the weeks that followed, Clara received letters and messages from people all over the country, sharing how her story had inspired them. Some wrote about finding the courage to mend broken relationships, while others spoke of finding hope in the face of loss. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a man named Thomas, who wrote about his struggle with depression after losing his wife. "Your story reminded me that love doesn't end when someone passes," Thomas wrote. "It gave me the strength to start living again, to honor her memory instead of being consumed by grief. Thank you for sharing your light." Clara read the letter with tears in her eyes, feeling a profound sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't change the world overnight, but she could make a difference, one person at a time. As the anniversary of the fire approached, Clara decided to hold a small gathering at the site where her home once stood. She invited Leah, her close friends, and a few of the people whose lives she had touched over the past year. They stood together in the empty lot, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of reflection. Clara lit a single candle, its flame flickering gently in the evening breeze. "This candle is a symbol of hope," she said. "A reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's always light. And that light lives within each of us." As the sun set and the stars appeared in the sky, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The journey that had begun in the fire had led her to a place of healing, purpose, and love. And as she looked around at the faces of those who had become part of her story, she knew that her light would continue to shine. The anniversary of the fire marked a turning point for Clara, solidifying her commitment to live each day with intention and purpose. After the small gathering, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for surviving, but for the opportunities her experience had given her to connect with others and spread her message of hope. In the days following the anniversary, Clara began to think about how she could expand her reach. While speaking at local events and community gatherings had been fulfilling, she wanted to do more, something that could impact people beyond her immediate circle. With Leah's encouragement, Clara decided to start a blog where she could share her story and the lessons she had learned. The blog, titled "Carrying the Light," quickly gained traction. Clara wrote about her near-death experience in vivid detail, describing the fire, the ethereal landscape, and the being of light that had guided her. But she didn't stop there. She also wrote about the smaller, everyday moments that had brought her joy, taught her resilience, or deepened her understanding of love and forgiveness. Her writing resonated with readers from all walks of life. Comments flooded in from people who shared their own experiences with loss, hope, and spiritual awakening. Some thanked her for giving them the courage to face their fears, while others simply expressed their gratitude for her honesty and vulnerability. One comment in particular stood out to Clara. It was from a young woman named Rachel, who wrote, "Your story has given me so much hope. I lost my mom to cancer last year, and I've been struggling to make sense of it all. Reading about your journey reminded me that love never really ends, it just changes form. Thank you for helping me see that." Clara replied to Rachel's comment with a heartfelt message, offering words of comfort and encouragement. The exchange left her feeling even more motivated to continue sharing her light with the world. As Carrying the Light grew in popularity, Clara received an invitation to speak at a national conference on resilience and personal growth. The event, held in a sprawling convention center, featured speakers from various fields, each sharing their unique perspectives on overcoming challenges and finding meaning in adversity. Clara's nerves were palpable as she stood backstage, waiting for her turn to speak. The audience was massive, far larger than any crowd she had faced before. But as she took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. This was where she was meant to be. "Good evening," Clara began, her voice steady. "A little over a year ago, I thought my life was over. I was trapped in a fire, surrounded by flames, with no way out. But what happened next changed everything." She recounted her journey with raw honesty, her words painting vivid images of the surreal landscape, the guide who had shown her the truth of her life, and the choice she had been given to return. She spoke about the lessons she had learned, the importance of love, forgiveness, and living with purpose, and how those lessons had shaped her life ever since. "I'm not here to tell you I have all the answers," Clara said, her gaze sweeping the audience. "But what I do know is this: even in our darkest moments, there is light. And that light lives within each of us, waiting to be shared." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Clara felt a surge of emotion as she stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed by the impact her story had on the audience. After the conference, Clara was approached by a man named David, who introduced himself as a producer for a documentary series about transformative life experiences. "Your story is incredible," David said, his tone earnest. "We'd love to feature you in our next episode. I think it could inspire so many people." Clara hesitated, unsure if she was ready to share her journey on such a large scale. But after a moment's thought, she nodded. "If it can help even one person, then I'm in." The documentary shoot took place over several weeks, with Clara revisiting the site of her former home, reflecting on her journey, and sharing her insights with the filmmakers. The process was both cathartic and challenging, forcing her to confront the pain of her past while celebrating the growth that had come from it. When the episode aired, the response was overwhelming. Viewers from around the world reached out to share how Clara's story had touched their lives. Some wrote about finding hope in the midst of grief, while others spoke of reconnecting with loved ones after years of estrangement. One email, in particular, brought Clara to tears. It was from a man named Peter, who had been contemplating ending his life before watching the documentary. "Your story saved me," Peter wrote. "Hearing about your journey reminded me that there's still beauty and love in this world, even when it's hard to see. Thank you for giving me the strength to keep going." Clara replied to Peter with a message of support, assuring him that his life had value and that he was not alone. The exchange reaffirmed her belief in the power of sharing her light, even in the face of uncertainty. As Clara's platform continued to grow, she began to think about how she could create a lasting impact. She partnered with Leah to start a nonprofit organization called Light Within, dedicated to supporting individuals who had experienced trauma or loss. The organization offered workshops, counseling, and community events, all designed to help people heal and find purpose. The launch event for Light Within was a heartfelt celebration, attended by friends, family, and members of the community. Clara stood on the stage, her heart full as she addressed the crowd. "When I was given a second chance at life, I didn't know what to do with it," she said. "But over time, I realized that the greatest gift we can give is to help others find their own light." That's what this organization is about, creating a space where people can heal, grow, and shine. The crowd erupted into applause, and Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun in the fire had led her to this moment, a moment of purpose, connection, and love. In the months following the launch of Light Within, Clara found herself busier than ever. The nonprofit quickly gained traction, drawing support from individuals and organizations alike. Donations poured in, and more people signed up for workshops and counseling sessions than Clara could have ever imagined. Despite the long hours and the emotional weight of the work, Clara felt a deep sense of purpose. One afternoon, Clara was leading a workshop on resilience for a group of individuals who had recently experienced significant losses. The room was filled with people from all walks of life, some grieving the loss of a loved one, others recovering from personal or professional setbacks. Clara began the session by sharing her own journey, hoping to create a space of trust and understanding. Resilience isn't about never falling, she said, her voice calm and steady. It's about finding the strength to get back up, even when it feels impossible. It's about allowing yourself to grieve, to feel, and to heal in your own time. As Clara spoke, she noticed a man in the back of the room who seemed particularly withdrawn. His eyes were downcast, and he hadn't participated in any of the earlier group discussions. After the session ended, Clara approached him gently. "Hi," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Clara. Thank you for coming today." The man hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Jacob," he said quietly. "I didn't think I'd actually come, but here I am." "I'm glad you did," Clara said. "Sometimes just showing up is the hardest part." Jacob looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and gratitude. "I lost my wife last year. It's been hard. I didn't know if I could ever feel normal again." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "It's okay to feel that way. Grief is a journey, not a destination. But you're not alone, Jacob. There's a community here to support you." Jacob nodded, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said. "I think I needed to hear that." Meanwhile, Clara's blog continued to grow, reaching readers from around the world. She received messages from people in countries she had never even heard of, all sharing how her words had inspired them to find hope and healing. One reader, a woman named Aisha from Kenya, wrote about how Clara's story had given her the courage to pursue her dream of becoming a teacher after years of self-doubt. "You reminded me that it's never too late to start over," Aisha wrote. "Your light has reached me all the way across the world, and for that, I'm forever grateful." Clara replied to Aisha's message with tears in her eyes, amazed at how far her story had traveled. It was moments like these that reminded her of the profound impact one person could have. One evening, Clara received an unexpected call from Diane, the producer who had worked on the documentary about her journey. "Clara," Diane said, her voice filled with excitement, "you're not going to believe this, but the documentary has been nominated for an award. It's being recognized for its impact and storytelling." Clara's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Diane said with a laugh. "There's an awards ceremony in a few weeks, and we'd love for you to attend." Clara felt a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. While she had never sought recognition, the idea that her story was being honored felt surreal. "I'd be honored to attend," she said finally. The awards ceremony was held in a grand theater, its opulent decor a stark contrast to the simplicity of Clara's daily life. As she walked the red carpet, surrounded by flashing cameras and reporters, she felt a wave of nervousness. But then she remembered the being's words, "Carry the light within you always." And with that, she stood a little taller, her heart steady. When the documentary won its category, Clara was invited on stage to accept the award alongside Diane and the production team. Standing before the packed theater, Clara took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "This journey has been about so much more than me," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "It's about the connections we share, the love we give, and the light we carry within us. I hope this story inspires others to find their own light and to share it with the world." The applause was thunderous, and Clara felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The recognition was a reminder of how far she had come and how far she still had to go. After the ceremony, Clara returned home to a flood of new messages and opportunities. Organizations and media outlets reached out, wanting to collaborate or feature her story. Though flattered, Clara was careful to stay grounded, prioritizing her work with light within and the connections she had built with her community. One day, while sorting through emails, Clara received a message that stood out. It was from a man named Miguel, who worked with a nonprofit in South America that supported families affected by natural disasters. Miguel had seen the documentary and wanted Clara to visit their organization to share her story with the communities they served. "We believe your message could bring hope to those who have lost everything," Miguel wrote. "Please consider joining us." The request resonated deeply with Clara. She had always felt a pull to reach beyond her immediate surroundings, and this seemed like the perfect opportunity. After discussing the logistics with Leah and the Light Within team, Clara decided to go. The trip to South America was both challenging and transformative. Clara visited villages that had been devastated by floods and landslides, meeting families who had lost their homes, their livelihoods, and, in some cases, their loved ones. Despite their hardships, Clara was struck by their resilience and their unwavering sense of community. During a gathering in one of the villages, Clara shared her story with a group of women who had come together to rebuild their community. She spoke about her journey through the fire, the lessons she had learned, and the importance of holding on to hope even in the face of unimaginable loss. "Life doesn't always go the way we expect," Clara said. "But even in the darkest moments, there is light. And that light is what connects us, what gives us the strength to keep going." One of the women, a grandmother named Rosa, stood up and hugged Clara tightly. "Thank you," Rosa said, her voice trembling. "You've reminded us that we are not alone." As Clara returned home, she reflected on the trip and the people she had met. Their strength and resilience had inspired her deeply, reinforcing her commitment to spreading her message of hope and love. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she felt more certain than ever that she was on the right path. The experiences in South America also gave Clara a new perspective on her own life. She realized that while she had come a long way, there were still areas where she needed to grow and heal. And she was ready to face those challenges with an open heart and an unwavering sense of purpose. Clara's return from South America marked a new chapter in her journey. The experiences she had there, meeting resilient communities, witnessing their determination to rebuild, and sharing her story with them, left her feeling deeply connected to humanity's shared struggles and triumphs. She realized that the light she carried wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone she met, and it grew brighter each time it was shared. Back home, Clara dove back into her work with Light Within, but she also felt a calling to expand the organization's mission. She wanted to create a global initiative that could reach people in crisis worldwide, offering not just hope but tangible support. With Leah's help, she began brainstorming ways to turn this dream into a reality. One evening, as they sat together in Clara's small office, Leah brought up an idea. "What if we started a global mentorship program?" she suggested. "We could pair people who've overcome challenges with those who are struggling, creating a network of support and inspiration." Clara's eyes lit up. "That's perfect," she said. "We could call it Be the Light." It's simple, but it says everything we want to convey. The idea quickly took shape, and within weeks, Be the Light was launched as an extension of Light Within. The program connected mentors and ments across the globe, fostering relationships that empowered both sides to grow and thrive. The initiative was met with enthusiasm, with hundreds of people signing up within the first month. One of the first success stories from Be the Light came from a young man named Omar in the Middle East. He had lost his home and family in a conflict and was struggling to find purpose in the aftermath. Through the program, Omar was paired with a mentor named Daniel, a war veteran from the United States who had faced his own battles with loss and trauma. Their connection was immediate, and their conversations became a source of healing for both of them. Omar found hope in Daniel's resilience, while Daniel found renewed purpose in helping Omar navigate his challenges. "I never thought I could make a difference in someone's life from so far away," Daniel wrote to Clara. "But this program has shown me that light knows no borders." Omar echoed the sentiment in his own message. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not alone. Thank you for creating this program. It's given me hope." As Be the Light gained momentum, Clara found herself busier than ever. She traveled frequently, meeting with communities and speaking at events to promote the program. Despite the demands on her time, she made it a point to stay connected with Leah and her close friends, knowing that their support was what kept her grounded. One evening, after returning from a trip to Europe, Clara sat down with Leah to reflect on how far they had come. "Can you believe this all started with a fire?" Clara said, shaking her head in disbelief. "It feels like a lifetime ago." Leah smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "You've turned something so devastating into something beautiful. I think Mom would be proud." Clara felt a lump rise in her throat at the mention of their mother. "I hope so," she said softly. "I think about her every day." As the second anniversary of the fire approached, Clara decided to host another gathering, this time inviting people from all over the world who had been impacted by her story or the Be the Lights program. The event, held in a large community center, was a celebration of resilience, connection, and the power of hope. The room was filled with people from diverse backgrounds, each with their own story of struggle and triumph. Clara stood on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, and felt a wave of emotion wash over her.